If you're as old as I am and had the honor, nay, distinct privilege of growing up in the 80s and 90s, then you probably have a stable of unique cars in your mind that you look back on fondly and think, why don't they make cars that look like that anymore? I know I do. In fact, a couple I can think of right off the top are cars like the Civic, RX-7, the Tacoma, and even the Nissan Sentra. These weren't supercars. They were hardly even sports cars. But they were fun cars that had their own individual look and style. They weren't the cheap androgynous knockoffs of today that stole their names from other better cars in an attempt to nostalgia bait us into buying soulless copycats. And because I absolutely have no respect for these pretend modern versions, I want to talk about 4 cars that completely ripped off the names of far better ones of the past. I think I'm going to call this Who Thought This Was a Good Idea? Number 1 on the list is the Honda Prelude. The new one sucks. I could really leave it there and be totally okay with my summation of it, but I'll elaborate. And just to clarify, my judgment is mostly based on the way these cars look, not so much their mechanical or performance aspect. Because just like people, you can fix your performance, but you can't do a lot to fix ugly. That's just life. I didn't make the rules. The first gen Prelude was originally released into the world, much like myself, in 1978. Yeah, I'm definitely getting old. The first gen Preludes weren't all that exciting. I mean, they were basically fuel-efficient little Japanese sports cars from the 80s. However, the second and third gen is where the Prelude really started to take on its iconic look. It had a long hood and low aerodynamic profile that really gave it a more performative look than it really had any business being. It wasn't fast, but it looked like it could be. It even had pop-up headlights.
Pop up and down headlights, go! Pop up and down headlights! Pop up and down headlights, pop up and down headlights, pop up and down headlights!
I will admit, the 4th gen redesign was too rounded and really got rid of the characteristics that made it look like a Prelude. The 5th gen brought a lot of the aggressive angular design back to the car, plus it got a lot of performance upgrades along the way. Each generation of the Prelude was an interesting, sporty-looking two-door that was widely loved by consumers, and a car that sits fondly in my memory. Then, 26 years later, as many businesses and companies do that have run out of creativity, they come up with a very generic, nondescript product. They slap the Prelude name on it, pat themselves on the back, and then wonder why sales suck. Seriously, who thought this was a good idea? I actually think the new Prelude looks like crap. I haven't seen anyone talking about this car. Anyone. Well, not in the way Honda would like them to. They completely missed the mark on its design, as well as priced it starting at $42,000. And it's a hybrid? Are you serious? I could go on and on, but I won't, because the Prelude doesn't deserve any more attention than it's already received. Can you say nostalgia cash grab? If you enjoy this video even just a little bit, then consider subscribing to the channel. Also, let me know of any other models manufacturers shamelessly stole the names of that need to be featured in Who Thought This Was a Good Idea. Can't thank you enough for your support. You guys are awesome. Now, back to the video. Number 2 on the list, the Honda Passport. I know it seems like I'm dunking on Honda, but they seemingly have a knack for nostalgia baiting. The first and second gen Passports were awesome. These were SUVs that looked like SUVs. They looked like trucks you could actually take off-road or load up and go camping, or basically anything that wasn't just getting groceries. It had good ground clearance, a V6 with over 200 horses, and it was actually available in a manual. I really like the old Passports. They ended production in 2002, but saw a revival, I guess that's what you could call it, in 2018 with the 3rd gen, and WTF. You don't need me to tell you how far these things have fallen. Just look at it. It came back as basically a slightly longer CRV. Why? Why don't they just name the soccer chauffeurs something else? The 3rd gen Passport looked like the type of crossover that would get stuck in your yard if you actually drove off the driveway. Gone were the rugged good looks of a capable SUV, and instead, we got a reimagined CRV. Seriously, who thought this was a good idea? I will say that the 4th gen Passport is a little bit better and actually made an attempt to toughen it up, especially the Trail Sport Edition. Though really, I look at it and think that they're good for a dirt road or two, but anything beyond that is probably going to void the warranty on it when it gets towed in for suspension or transmission repairs. Why do they do this to us? Good Passport, you deserved way better than this. Number 3, the Chevy Blazer. This one might be one of the most offensive examples of name stealing in the history of cars. I'm talking primarily about the K5 Blazer, but either this or the S10 Blazer is a far cry from the absolutely atrocious abomination they turned the Blazer into. The K5 was awesome. It was a giant two-door SUV. It was blocky and rugged and had a V8. It looked like a proper SUV, and with the proper rims, tires, and lift, it was a beast of a truck. I had a friend that had one of these, and the thing I distinctly recall about it was how big the interior was. Driver and passenger were about 10 feet apart from each other, and the back was so big you could fit a sectional in it. Beyond the K5, the S10 Blazer was also a respectable SUV. The first gen was literally a chip off the old K5, just smaller. The second gen got modernized and became a little more practical, but it was still a very capable off-road vehicle, especially the ZR2 edition. The K5 ended its run in 1994 and the S10 Blazer in 2005. However, Chevy wasn't done with it yet. In 2019, this thing that they called a Blazer was excreted into the world. A weak, pathetic, in-name only crossover that was labeled the Blazer. And again, the only thing I can say about it is, why? Who thought this was a good idea? Why is it that everything is dumbed down to look exactly like every other crossover on the road? Better yet, why can't they come up with different names for modern vehicles? And I know someone will say the Blazer SS is a pretty ridiculous vehicle with over 600 horses and track features galore. My stance is still the same. Call it something else. Instead of Blazer, call it the Chevy Afterthought or something equally forgettable, because that's what the new Blazer is to me and every other person that's rented a fleet SUV crossover in the last few years. Forgettable. Number 4, the Pontiac Aztek. This one's a little different situation. Different in the sense that it didn't steal the name off of a previous, better version of a car. Rather, it started off life as the mongoloid mutant cousin that nobody wanted. Literally. You don't need me to tell you this thing is absolutely atrocious. It looks like a Grand Am and an RX 300 were bumping uglies, and the Aztek was the result. I know there are some very poorly designed vehicles out there, but this one is number 1 for me when I try to pick the worst. GM literally told the designers to make a bold, in-your-face vehicle that wasn't for everybody. I think they misheard that and made one that wasn't for anybody. The vehicle had some interesting tech and features for the time, but it wasn't enough to overcome the awkward design of the vehicle. Surprisingly, the Aztek was in production for almost 5 years and underperformed its sales targets every year, which is an obvious sign that this ugly bastard wasn't long for this world. Besides being Walter White's whip in Breaking Bad for a few seasons and seeing a slight resurgence as a cult classic, the Aztek will undoubtedly go down as one of the ugliest things ever created on purpose by people with eyeballs and brains, and it absolutely gets a "who thought this was a good idea." Alright, that's going to be it for today. What other cars are out there that have absolutely ripped off the name of a much better previous version? I'd love to hear from you guys. If you made it this far, do one more thing for me before you go and hit the subscribe button. It doesn't seem like much, but it means a ton to me. Thank you again for being here, and remember to stay safe out there, take care of each other, and enjoy the ride. Peace.